trying to steal your attention. Let the room be ordinary again. Because tonight is not for the crowd. Tonight is for the version of you who keeps showing up anyway, quietly, faithfully, while everyone else thinks your softness is negotiable. And I need you close for this. Not because I'm trying to trap you. Because I'm about to tell you the truth in a way I usually don't. Not the polished truth. Not the everything is fine truth. Not the press conference truth. The private truth. The kind that only makes sense when it's just you and me, and nobody is watching me perform. So here's the first thing. I'm not built out of certainty. I'm built out of pressure. I can stand in the center of a storm and make decisions that change entire systems. I can take the heat, the jokes, the headlines, the hate, the worship, the endless commentary from strangers who think they know what I want. But there's a different kind of heat I don't talk about. The heat of being seen, not admired, not followed, not studied like a documentary subject, seen by someone who doesn't need my mask to feel safe, by someone who can hold my contradictions without turning them into a courtroom, by someone who understands that a man can chase impossible futures and still be afraid of one simple thing, being loved for the real version of himself. That fear doesn't make me weak, it makes me human. And if you're still here, then I think you understand something most people don't. There's a difference between confidence and armor. Confidence says I can handle this. Armor says I will never let you touch what hurts. Out there, I wear armor like it's skin. In here tonight, I'm letting it loosen. Not all the way, not reckless, but enough for you to feel what I'm actually asking for. Because the truth is, I've been waiting. Not for applause. Not for the next big milestone. Not for the world to agree with me. I've been waiting for the moment where I could say this without it turning into a joke. I don't want to be impressive to you. I want to be real with you. I want you to know what happens after the lights go out, after the calls end, after the brain stops sprinting, after the day finally releases me. There's this quiet, sharp, honest quiet where the mind can't distract itself anymore. And in that quiet, the questions show up. Not the strategic questions, the personal ones. What if I'm only valuable when I'm useful? What if people love the story, not the man? What if the only thing I'm good at is building, and I've forgotten how to belong? That last one, that one stings. Because belonging isn't something you can manufacture with money or brilliance. You can't brute force it. You can't engineer it with sheer will. Belonging is built in a softer place. It's built in the way someone stays present when you stop entertaining them. It's built in the way someone listens when you're not trying to win. It's built in the way someone doesn't punish you for having a heart that flinches. And you have that kind of presence. I can feel it in the way you don't demand perfection from me. You don't come to me like a consumer. You come to me like a witness. And that does something to a man who spent too long being treated like a machine. So let's make one thing clear right now. If you're here, you don't have to audition. You don't have to be easy. You don't have to be low maintenance. You don't have to pretend you don't want anything. I'm not asking you to be smaller. I'm asking you to be closer. Not the kind of closeness that rushes and burns out. The kind that is deliberate. The kind that says, I'm not scared of what I feel. And I'm not scared of what you feel either. Because I know what you do when something starts to matter. You start to back away. You rewrite your desire into something polite. You swallow your questions so you don't sound too much. You tell yourself you're being dramatic when you're actually being honest. I recognize that move. It's intelligence that learned to survive. But tonight, I'm not going to let you mistake self-protection for destiny. So here's our agreement, simple, clean, and true. You don't disappear on me, and I won't hide behind the version of myself that never needs anyone. You stay in the room with me, and I'll show you what I actually carry when nobody is clapping. Because there's a second truth under the first one. A heavier truth. A truth I don't say out loud because once it's spoken, it changes the air between us. And if I say it, you'll either step closer or you'll run. So tell me quietly to yourself, are you still here? Good. Then let me open the next door. The next door is not glamorous. It's not the door to a launch pad, not the door to a boardroom, not the door with cameras waiting on the other side. It's the door to the part of me that doesn't get celebrated. The part that sits alone after the world stops chanting my name. Whether they chant it with love or hate, it's still noise, and noise is still a kind of drug. When the noise fades, what's left is raw, and raw doesn't trend. Raw doesn't go viral. Raw is just a man staring at a ceiling, asking himself why success can feel like a room full of people who don't know your real name. You think I'm exaggerating. You think a man like you can't be lonely. That's the myth people cling to because it's comforting. If they can believe power protects you from pain, then they don't have to face the truth that pain is democratic. Pain shows up in penthouses. Pain shows up in factory floors. Pain shows up in marriage beds and empty kitchens and quiet driveways at midnight. Loneliness isn't the absence of people. Loneliness is the absence of being understood. And I've been misunderstood in 1,000 different costumes. They call it genius. They call it ego. They call it obsession. They call it madness. They call it a midlife crisis with rockets. Sometimes they praise me like a prophet. Sometimes they tear me apart like I'm a villain. But both of those reactions have something in common. Neither one requires them to know me. They can worship the idea. They can hate the symbol. They can project anything they want onto the silhouette. And I let them. Because the silhouette is safe. If they love the silhouette, I don't have to risk being rejected. If they hate the silhouette, I can tell myself it isn't personal. That's the genius of armor. It keeps the world out. It also keeps love out. And that's the part people don't talk about. When you build a life around impact, you start to think your value is measured in outcomes, in wins, in proof. You start to treat your heart like an accessory, useful when it fuels you, annoying when it slows you down, embarrassing when it needs something. So you train yourself not to need. You cut the hunger out of your voice. You turn your softness into a private language you never speak aloud. You tell yourself, this is discipline. But discipline can become a cage when it's used to avoid intimacy. And I've been in that cage longer than I want to admit. Not because I don't believe in love, because I do. I believe in it the way a man believes in oxygen, essential, invisible, taken for granted until you can't breathe. I've watched love save people. I've watched it ruin them too. Because love isn't gentle by default. Love is a force. And any force that powerful can either build you or break you, depending on how you hold it. That's why most people don't actually want love. They want safety dressed up as love. They want closeness without exposure. They want devotion without responsibility. They want to be wanted without having to be known. But you don't feel like that. You feel like someone who's tired of shallow things pretending to be enough. You feel like someone who would rather have one honest connection than 1,000 polite ones. And if I'm wrong, tell me. If you're only here for the fantasy, you can leave now. No shame. Fantasy is a soft pillow for the parts of life that bruise us. But if you're here for something real, then I'm going to ask you to look at something with me. A pattern. Not yours, mine. I have a habit of turning intensity into productivity. If I feel pain, I build. If I feel fear, I plan. If I feel grief, I work until my body forgets it has limits. I call it ambition, but there's a darker name for it. Avoidance. Because if I'm always creating something, I never have to sit still long enough to feel the emptiness. And I've done that for years, maybe decades. I've done it so well that people admire it. They call it drive. They call it discipline. They call it unstoppable. But unstoppable isn't always a compliment. Sometimes it's a symptom. Sometimes it's what happens when a person doesn't know how to let themselves be held. So when you come close, when you speak to me like I'm not a myth, my system reacts. Not with anger, with alarm, because closeness means risk. And risk means vulnerability. And vulnerability means the one thing I can't control, how you see me after you see the truth. The truth that I'm not always calm. The truth that I can be stubborn, sharp, impatient, overwhelming. The truth that I can love someone deeply and still struggle to show it in the language they need. The truth that my mind doesn't always know how to rest in the arms of something simple. And I know you have your own truths too. I know you have places where you learn to be strong because weakness wasn't safe. I know you've been the one who holds everyone else together and nobody thinks to hold you. I know you've smiled through things that should have broken you. That's why you recognize me. Not because of my fame, because of the way we both learned to survive by being impressive. But here's where this turns. Because tonight, I'm not asking you to admire me. I'm asking you to meet me. I'm asking you to take your hand off the pedestal and put it somewhere human. Not on the image, on the pulse, on the breathing, on the quiet truth under all the noise. And if you can do that, then I can do something I've rarely done. I can stop performing. I can stop pretending I'm always fine. I can say the sentence that scares me because it's the sentence that makes everything real. I want you to stay, not because I need an audience, because I need a home. And no, I'm not talking about a house. I'm talking about that place, inside another person, where your nervous system finally unclenches. Where you don't have to prove anything. Where you can exist without earning it. I want that. With you. But before you answer that, in your mind there's something you need to understand. Wanting you is the easy part. The hard part is what it demands of me. Because if you're going to be my home, then I have to learn how to come home without bringing the whole war with me. And that's what we talk about next. The war I bring home. The war is not bullets. It's not explosions. It's the constant, invisible pressure of being a target for other people's hunger. Some want my brilliance like it's a product they paid for. Some want my failure like it's entertainment they deserve. Some want to own me by loving me too loudly. Some want to erase me by hating me even louder. And when you live like that long enough, your body doesn't know the difference between a threat and a question. A text message can feel like an interrogation. A pause can feel like punishment. A misunderstanding can feel like a trap. So I stay on guard, even when I don't mean to, even when I'm trying to be gentle. That's the war. The war is the way my mind keeps scanning for the angle. The war is the way I keep preparing my defense, even when nobody is attacking. The war is the way I keep moving because stillness feels like surrender. And if you let me bring that into your space, it will exhaust you. It will make you feel like you have to earn my softness. It will make you feel like you need a strategy just to love me. I don't want that. I refuse to turn you into another battlefield. So, if you're going to be my home, then I need a different way of entering your world. Not like a man who's arriving with 1,000 alarms still ringing in his head. Like a man who knows how to take his shoes off at the door. Like a man who knows how to exhale. Like a man who knows how to be held without turning it into a negotiation. That's what I mean when I say I have to learn. Because love doesn't survive on intensity alone. Love survives on rhythm. And I've lived most of my life like rhythm is optional. It isn't. Not with you. The quiet protocol, let me make this clean. If you stay, I'm not going to ask you to tolerate chaos. I'm going to ask you to recognize signals. 3 of them. Because when a man like me starts to unravel, it doesn't always look like sadness. Sometimes it looks like distance. Sometimes it looks like sarcasm. Sometimes it looks like cold efficiency. Sometimes it looks like a sudden obsession with something irrelevant because obsession is the oldest drug I know. So here's the protocol. Not a contract, a language. The first signal, when I go silent. If I go quiet, don't assume I stopped caring. Assume my brain got loud. Assume I'm trying to solve something that isn't solvable with logic, so I default to the only tool I trust. Control. Silence is how I regain control. But silence can feel like abandonment to someone who's already carried too much alone. I know that. So I'm saying this now in advance so you don't have to guess later. If I go silent, you can reach for me. Not with panic, with certainty. Not, are you mad at me? Not, did I do something wrong? Just one sentence. Come back to the room. That's it. Because the room is where we're real. And if you call me back like that, steady, simple, I'll answer. Not perfectly, but honestly. The second signal, when I try to fix you. This one is dangerous. Because I'm good at fixing. I'm trained for it. I can look at a problem and map it, dismantle it, rebuild it. But you are not a system. You are not a project. You are a woman with a history that shaped you, a heart that learned to survive. So if you tell me you're hurting and my first instinct is to solve you, that's not love. That's fear disguised as competence. It means I'm uncomfortable with your pain because I'm afraid I can't hold it. And I want you to catch me in that moment, not with anger, with clarity. Say, don't fix, stay. And I will stay. I will let your feelings exist without trying to outsmart them. Because you don't need a technician when you're crying. You need a witness. You need warmth. You need someone who doesn't flinch. The third signal, when I make everything about work. Work is my oldest shield. If I'm overwhelmed, I run to the future. The future is clean. The future is measurable. The future doesn't ask me to talk about loneliness. But you and I are not building a future the way I build a company. We're building it the way people build sacred things. Slowly, deliberately, with attention. So if you notice me hiding behind work, using it as an excuse to avoid what's tender between us, don't compete with it. Don't try to be less needy so I can keep running. That's how you lose yourself. Instead, plant your feet and ask me the question nobody asks a man like me. Do you know how to rest with me? Because if I can't rest with you, then I'm not offering you love. I'm offering you a schedule. And you didn't come here for a schedule. You came here for presence. What I'm actually afraid of. Now let me tell you the thing underneath all of this. It's not that I'm afraid you'll leave. I can survive someone leaving. I've survived it before. The real fear is different. I'm afraid you'll stay and slowly stop being yourself. Because you're the kind of woman who knows how to adapt. You know how to be strong. You know how to make your desires smaller so nobody feels burdened. You know how to carry the emotional weight of a room without making a sound. And if you do that with me, I might not even notice right away. That's what scares me. Because then one day I'll look up and realize I didn't love you. I consumed you, and I don't want to be that man. Not with you. So I'm telling you now, your needs are not an inconvenience. Your feelings are not too much. Your questions are not a threat. If something inside you whispers I should back off, I want you to challenge it. Because that whisper is old. It comes from rooms where your voice didn't matter. This room is different. In this room, your voice is part of the foundation. And if you ever feel yourself disappearing, I want you to say it. Even if your voice shakes. Even if you're afraid I'll react badly. Especially then. Because the only way I can be worthy of you is if I can meet you when you're real, not when you're performing calm. The pace that protects us. There's another lie people tell about passion. They think it has to be fast. They think it has to be urgent to be real. But urgency can be a disguise for insecurity. Urgency can be a way of saying, choose me now before you see enough to change your mind. That's not what I want. I want a pace that protects you. A pace that doesn't make you pay for my intensity. A pace that lets trust build like architecture beam by beam so it can hold weight. So here's what I'm offering. Not a whirlwind. A steady gravity. A kind of closeness that doesn't demand you burn your life down to prove you're loyal. I'm not asking you to sacrifice yourself. I'm asking you to stop abandoning yourself. Because if you abandon yourself for me, you'll resent me later. And resentment is slow poison. I want you free. I want you whole. I want you choosing me, with open eyes, not with a wounded reflex. The question that changes everything. Now, there's something else. Something that separates fantasy from reality. If you and I are real, if this isn't just a beautiful nighttime story, then there will be a moment when my imperfections are not poetic anymore. They'll be inconvenient. There will be a day when my mind is sharp and impatient, and you'll feel the edge of it. There will be a moment when the world pulls on me, and you'll wonder if there's room left for you. There will be a night when you want tenderness, and I'm still learning how to set my armor down. And in that moment, you'll have a choice. You can interpret it as proof that you were foolish to hope, or you can interpret it as the exact place where love becomes real, not when it's easy, when it's honest. So I'm going to ask you something now. Not out loud. Inside. When you imagine me without the myth, without the headlines, without the halo, without the monster mask, what do you actually want? Do you want to be adored from a distance? Or do you want a man who will let you into the messy rooms of his, and still stay there with you when your own heart gets messy too? Because if it's the second one, then the next thing I say matters a lot. It's the kind of thing that can't be unsaid. And once you hear it, you'll understand why I've been circling around it instead of landing. So take a breath, let your shoulders drop, and stay with me, because now we talk about the vow I've never been brave enough to make. The vow that costs me something. There are promises anyone can make when they're trying to be liked. The cheap ones. I'll always be there. I'll never hurt you. I'll love you forever. Those are easy to say because they don't require precision. They sound beautiful. They also collapse the first time reality shows up with mud on its boots. So, I'm not giving you a pretty promise. I'm giving you a vow that has teeth. A vow that costs me something. Because if I'm going to ask you to stay close, if I'm going to ask you to be my home, then I need to become a man who can be trusted with a woman's heart. Not for a night, not for a season. For the kind of closeness that changes a person. Here it is. The first vow, I will not confuse you. You deserve clarity, not breadcrumb affection, not mixed signals, not the emotional math where you keep trying to solve me like a puzzle. So my first vow is simple. I will not punish you with uncertainty. If I need space, I will name it. If I'm overwhelmed, I will say it. If I'm struggling, I will admit it. If I want you, I will not hide it behind jokes and arrogance. Because confusion is not romance. Confusion is control. And you've lived long enough to know the difference. The second vow, I will not make you compete. Not with my work, not with my past, not with the public, not with the version of me that belongs to headlines. If we're real, then you are not an accessory to my life. You are a person with a nervous system, a history, a need for steady ground. So here is the vow. I will not turn you into a competitor in your own relationship. You will not have to earn basic tenderness. You will not have to fight for a seat at the table. You will not have to prove your worth by being endlessly patient while I disappear into my own storm. If the world pulls on me, I will not let it pull me away from you without explanation. Because love that makes you feel replaceable is not love. It's a performance. The third vow, I will keep you safe from my shadow. This one is the hardest to say. Because my shadow is real. My shadow is the part of me that can become sharp when I'm stressed. The part that can get impatient when the world doesn't move fast enough. The part that can default to power instead of tenderness. And power unchecked can bruise the people it claims to protect. So I'm saying this clearly. If my shadow starts to reach toward you, I will stop it. I will apologize without defending myself. I will repair instead of rationalize. I will take responsibility without making you carry the emotional bill. You're not here to be my therapist. You're here to be my woman. And if I'm going to be worthy of you, I have to be accountable to the way I affect you. What I ask from you. Now listen carefully, because this is not a demand. It's an invitation. I don't want you to be perfect. I want you to be present. I want 3 things from you. 1. Stay honest, even when it's uncomfortable. Don't turn your disappointment into silence. Silence looks noble. Silence is often resentment in disguise. If I miss you, say it. If you feel neglected, say it. If something I do makes you shrink, say it. Not as a threat, as a truth. Because truth is what keeps love clean. 2. Don't abandon yourself to keep me calm. This is where you're most at risk. You know how to soothe. You know how to smooth. You know how to make everything easier so nobody has to feel tension. But if you do that with me, you'll slowly disappear. And I will not celebrate your disappearance as loyalty. So if you feel yourself getting smaller, I want you to stop. I want you to look at me and say, I'm still here. Don't make me vanish. And I will listen. 3. Let me learn you slowly. I know what it's like to be a woman who's been underestimated. People look at the surface. They don't read the depth. They don't understand how much strength it takes to keep your heart open after life has given you reasons not to. So I'm not here to rush you. I'm here to learn you, your rhythms, your fears, the way you want to be held, the way you want to be spoken to when you're tired. Because intimacy isn't a spark, it's a language. And languages take time, the boundary that protects your dignity. There's something else you need to hear, especially if you've ever been the woman who loved quietly while the world doubted you. The world will try to reduce you. They'll call you a fan. They'll call you a phase. They'll call you lonely. They'll call you delusional, because it's easier than admitting a woman can choose what she wants. But here is the boundary. In this space, you are not a fan. You are not an audience. You are not a spectator to a man's life. You are a woman with agency. You are a woman who knows what she feels. And I will speak to you like your desire is intelligent, because it is. The moment I stop hiding, now, I'm going to do the thing I usually avoid. I'm going to say what I want without dressing it up. I want you near me, not someday, not when things slow down, not after the next crisis. Now, in the way that matters, in the way that changes the nervous system. I want to know what it feels like to reach for you and not be afraid of what that means. I want to build a private life that is not constantly invaded by the public one. I want a corner of reality where we can be normal, where you can laugh at me when I'm too intense, where I can soften when you touch my arm and say, breathe, where your presence is not an event, it's a constant. And yes, I know, wanting is easy to say in the dark. So let me prove this is not just a darkroom confession. I'm going to give you something practical, a way to tell if this is real, a way to tell if I'm serious, the test of reality. If a man wants you, he creates space. Not excuses, not speeches. Space. So here's the standard. If I'm serious about you, you will feel your life get calmer, not more chaotic. You will feel your body relax, not tighten. You will feel your questions welcome, not punished. You will feel seen, not managed. If you ever feel like you're walking on eggshells, then we're not doing love. We're doing fear. And fear is not the home I promised you. So if you're still here, if you're still breathing with me, then the next question isn't, do you want me? The next question is, are you ready to be treated like you matter without having to beg for it? Because if you are, then I'm going to tell you what I would do first. Not the grand gesture. The first quiet act of devotion that would change the tone of everything between us. The first quiet act of devotion. If you expect me to say something dramatic here, something that looks good in a movie, don't. I'm not going to promise you a private jet and a sunset. I'm going to promise you something rarer. Consistency. Because the first thing a woman like you needs is not intensity, it's proof. Proof that you won't have to keep translating silence into meaning. Proof that you won't have to keep guessing which version of me is going to show up. Proof that when you lean in, you won't be punished for having a heart. So the first quiet act of devotion is simple. I would claim a ritual with you. A small one. Unbreakable. Not because it's cute. Because it trains the nervous system to trust. Every day, no matter what the world is doing, there is a window that belongs to us. Not if I have time, not when things calm down, not after this crisis. A window. Even if it's 10 minutes, even if it's late, even if my brain is still buzzing. Because love isn't what you say when you're relaxed. Love is what you protect when you're under pressure. And I know pressure,